Alright, so let's jump right into it. Dune, right, has just been updated. We're waiting on the trailer. And, in the process of me making this video, editing this video, the trailer could actually be out already. So, please do me a massive favor. I've done quite a bit of Dune content here on this channel. If you enjoy that, please do me a bit of a massive favor. Slap a like on it. I'm going to be breaking down, obviously, DUNE Part 2. Hopefully that will push my channel up enough in the Dune ranking algorithm system here on YouTube to get viewers to come and watch my videos. So if you enjoy my Dune content, you can see behind me, all those books on my bookshelf I've read. But specifically, all the Dune books are back there, all the ones written by Frank Herbert. So, I'm a massive fan of the Dune world. When the movie first came out and the content I made back then, I hadn't read the books yet, but I have now, so let's jump right into it. Okay, so the article is pretty interesting. I'm not going to read it, though. If you want to read it, just go to Vanity Fair and check it out for yourself. I'm more here for the pictures. I'm going to explain the pictures to you guys. All right, so here we go. Muad'Dib. We have Paul Muad'Dib Atreides sinking in with the Fremen in the sense that his eyes are full-on blue. Now, this is dope. He's got a still suit underneath, and one of the things that was mentioned in the article that was just released yesterday or the day before was that Paul's going to ride a sandworm in this movie. Now, that's something that the casual fan needed to hear because if you're watching this, you know Paul rides the old men of the desert all the time. As a matter of fact, at the end of this movie, well, actually, no, they could be doing a one part for Dune Messiah. But basically, Paul will, there's going to be hella sandworm riding. I'm surprised it didn't happen in the first movie after now having read the books. That's one of the things that Paul does. And when he does it, it's still seemingly kind of dangerous because we don't know if he's going to be able to survive his first ride. It's kind of crazy. So what they do is they basically set up these things that are called thumpers. They put them in the ground. We saw them in the first, yes, Vanity Fair, you need these ads because your billion-dollar company doesn't have enough shit. So anyway, they put these things called thumpers in the ground. And they put them in the ground. Those thumpers release seismic, it just basically, they thump noise into the ground. In the old men of the desert, the worms, right? They're attracted to this noise and they come faster. That's why it's dangerous to walk across the open desert and not walk in the Fremen way. Because these massive sandworms that make the spice, this substance that is like coveted all throughout the universe, right? They need it to do literally everything, right? The main thing is interspatial travel. Like the Spacing Guild needs spice in order to operate their massive freightliners. The Spacing Guild ships that we saw in the Dune Part 1. Those massive behemoth machines can't be maneuvered and piloted without the use of spice. You need spice to show you what, 10 steps ahead of what's going to happen if you go down this path in space. So the Spacing Guild uses this stuff, right? So anyway, getting way back on track here. First time Paul summons a worm, it is nuts. It's, I wouldn't do it justice describing it here in the video. Just go read Dune if you haven't. The books aren't very long. If you're watching this video, you probably have mostly, seen my Song of Ice and Fire content. Those books, right? The first Game of Thrones book is like the first 3 Dune books put in together. So if you think it's going to be this massive, time-consuming thing, that's actually not the case. The first Dune book, let's see, right here, is about 340 pages, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, well, I lied. The print is bigger in this book, though. I know that. It is, okay, yes. 617 pages. 617 pages. And the first Game of Thrones book is like double that. So yeah, I big fan of the world. The next image that we got from the Vanity Fair article, that's Denis Villeneuve, Princess Irulan. Now I've seen Florence Pugh in some stuff before, but This is really exciting. I saw someone had left a comment on the short that I did yesterday for, just quick update, like a little 1-minute video. Someone had commented and said they actually went to the CinemaCon, had seen the trailer, signed an NDA, but they said once people see Florence Pugh on screen, she's stunning. She looks amazing. Apparently, she's everything we ever wanted in a Princess Irulan. Now, if you're unaware, Princess Irulan does marry Paul, right? Paul becomes the emperor, but Princess Irulan ain't getting no emperor dick, right? So literally, Paul basically destroys the empire and propositions himself to say, hey, look, Padishah Emperor the Sixth, I'm going to marry your daughter. She's going to marry me, but we're not going to have any children. It's by business only. Like, when Paul marries her, he's in love with Chani. He's copulating with Chani. Him and Chani have kids, but him and Irulan never mate. Now, what's interesting is way down the line, when we have the God Emperor Leto II himself, all of the descendants from that time period forward are, most members of House Atreides are mixed with members, DNA, genetic DNA, of Princess Irulan's house. So they've got Harkonnen blood already through Paul. Paul is Harkonnen via his mother's side. Jessica's father is the Baron Harkonnen. So I don't know if you knew that, but spoiler alert, right? So Paul is very much Harkonnen. So when Paul dies, Leto 2, 3,000 years in the future, he basically took the Bene Gesserit, Emperor Leto II, so Paul's second son. Paul has one son, Leto the First, that dies when he's like 2 years old, and he's killed by the Saurodakar army. And in Dune, they sort of just glaze over it. They just go right past it. Paul's like, well, shit happens. And then he has twins, right? Ganima and Leto II. And obviously, Leto II grows up to become the God Emperor, but he basically takes over the Bene Gesserit breeding program, and all of the descendants of House Atreides have House Harkonnen genetic ancestry, but also they've got some genetic ancestry from Irulan, and then also, get this, from the Saurodakar army. Miles Tegh is a damn, he would be a Saurodakar commander in modern-day Dune, which is like 11,000 years in the future. But I'm getting too sidetracked here. Princess Irulan, Florence Pugh looks amazing. This is kind of like a toned-down version of the character, because you got to realize that this is the daughter of Emperor Padishah VI, and they've been in power for thousands of years. House Carino, outside of House Atreides and House Harkonnen, are the strongest house, right, in all of the, known and settled and inhabited universe. Obviously, Emperor Carino, sitting on the damn throne, gives a lot of power to House Carino. But like I said, Paul marries his daughter, doesn't give her no dick, and she's basically friends with no benefits, right? So it's a political statement when Paul marries her. Then the next image we got is my girl Zendaya's Chani. So let's see, Zendaya's Chani, a warrior with the Fremen and inhabitant desolate world of Arrakis. So we all know who Chani is. I will say this, I've already given a bunch of spoilers already, but let me give another sort of miniature spoiler warning here. Zendaya gonna die. Chani gonna die when she gives birth to Ganima and Leto II. Now, to be fair, she doesn't die just from giving birth. What happens is this bitch right here, right, Irulan, fucking poisons her with birth contraceptives to prevent her from getting pregnant, right? Like, it's kind of like a secret. Like, Irulan is feeding her small amounts of contraceptives in her food and drink and stuff for years, right? This is why she doesn't have another kid after Leto the First. And then when she does, she has twins, and the pregnancy goes awry, where they develop really fast, and Chani has to consume massive amounts of spice to stay alive. Like, spice prolongs life, but it also shortens it, but it also, like, allows you to sort of be healthy, but you're also physically dependent upon it. So anyway, long story short, she has to consume massive amounts of spice, and this pushes her over the edge. And ultimately, when she gives birth to Ganima and Leto II, right, she dead. She done died, right? But she comes back in the form of sort of like a spirit, right? Because she's inside Leto 2's head. Leto can actually become his father. Like, so they've got all of their genetic ancestry and memory from every single one of their descendants before them. So it's kind of weird, like in Children of Dune, Leto 2 can become his father, Paul Muad'Dib, Paul Atreides, right? The number one, right? And Ghanima can become her mother, Chani. So they kind of have like a last little thing, last little conversation of peace, because they don't really get that, because once Ghanima and Leto are born, Chani dies. So that'll probably be in Dune Messiah, which would be technically Dune Part 3, but Dune Part 1, right? All the events of this book were split up in between two movies. I have seen the rumors of people saying shit like it was boring, and like there was a headline trending on Reddit. My boy Gurney Halleck. It was a headline trending on Reddit where like Dune picks up right where the audience members fell asleep. I guess I think the thing is the director, Denis Villeneuve, has a track record of making films that are really awesome to some people, but boring as shit to other folks. So that's why that headline was trending. But me personally, I wasn't a big fan of Blade Runner, but Dune was amazing. I love the first Dune movie. It's interesting because when I first saw Dune, it was random as shit. I saw clips of something that got promoted on my YouTube feed. Like, obviously, I had heard of Dune and stuff, but it was the 1984 version, and I was like, what is this? There's a video of me reacting to it up here on YouTube, just a small portion of it. It's like 6 minutes of it. The full video I was going to upload to my Patreon, but I haven't done that yet. So anyway, what was the whole point I was just making now? Damn, ain't that about a bitch? All right, well, let's get back on track here. Gurney Halleck, right? Let's just played by Josh Brolin. Dude's badass. So what ends up happening to Gurney is Gurney ends up basically sleeping with Jessica. Like when it's all said and done. So technically Jessica's next husband, right, is Chani's father, Stilgar, which is weird because Stilgar is her uncle on the in the books. Stilgar, so the dude, what's the Spanish cat's name that's playing him? I don't know the Spanish cat's name, but Stilgar, wait. Yeah, Stilgar's related to Chani in the books because Chani's mother is related to Stilgar, I think like a brother, well, obviously be through sister. So in the books, the character that we saw sort of being the bridge in between the Atreides taking over Arrakis from the Harkonnens. Right, so this is, what did they call her? They changed her role. She's a dude in the books, and she's white, right? But in the Dune movie, they made her a woman, and they made her black. I'm trying to think of, they called her the Emperor's pet. So basically, this is embarrassing as hell, but I'm going to leave it in because it just shows you that, like, even though I like to pretend like I have all the information stored in my head, sometimes my brain really fucks me and I just completely forget entire characters' names. So Liet Kynes, right, it's played by a black woman with dreads in the Dune movie, but in the books, it's a white dude, right? Liet Kynes is Chani's father. That's revealed through the process of reading the book, right? So in the movie, Chani's mother is Liet Kynes. Liet Kynes is now as an imperial climatologist. That's what I was trying to think of. So basically, you find out in the history of Dune, the original emperor who made Arrakis into a desert was trying to create spice. And they're sort of like in the main Dune timeline. So when Dune Part 2 is taking place in Dune Part 1, the imperial climatologist was put on Dune to try to turn it from a desert planet into a paradise. But they realize that when you do that, when you turn Dune back into a water world, you destroy the worms, you destroy the spice, and you defeat the whole point of having Arrakis as a planet, right? So the worms, right, the sandworms, whenever they touch water or get near water, they explode into 1,000 millions of little pieces called little makers. They're worms, right? Like basically little baby tiny worms. And what happens, or what happened on Arrakis is these little tiny worms would go to massive bodies of water and start absorbing all of the water in that area. So they become sand trout. They become these massive just blobs. And then eventually they turn into worms, old men of the desert, full size, able to ride, destroy anything in their path. Sandworms, right? So, getting way back on track here. Chani is poisoned by Irulan, and she has to consume a bunch of spice, and then she dies. And I think that I had already sort of made that as a point. But Gurney Halleck looks amazing, right? So, oh yeah, that's what I was saying, right? So Jessica, she's married to Paul Atreides' father, Duke Leto, right? And he ends up, technically Leto the Second should be Leto the Third, because Leto the Second was named after Leto the First, who's Paul's father. So anyway, he dies, right? He died in the first movie. And then one of the ways of Fremen society and just the way that planet sort of works is like Jessica literally marries Stilgar. They don't necessarily copulate, but during that time of the entire, massive wars going on, she's sort of with Stilgar. Then eventually she goes back to Caladan, and Gurney Halleck goes with her. And then it's revealed in Children of the Dune that her and Gurney Halleck were sort of hooking up. So I know some of the other books that were written by Kevin J. Anderson and Frank Herbert's son probably go back and explain exactly what happened to Gurney Halleck, but we don't. There's not a 100% nail on the head of what happens to him ultimately, because at the end of Children of Dune, there's a massive time jump in between Children of Dune and God Emperor Dune, something like 3,500 years. So, there's that. Continuing on with these images here. Let's see. The next one we got this is exciting. All right. Now, this is going to take a little bit of explaining. This is Austin Butler's Feyd-Rautha. He's got a lumpy head. I call him Lumpy Head. Song of Ice and Fire reference. Aria Lumpy Head. So Feyd-Rautha, right? When they say that he's going to be a psychotic Olympic swordsman, in the books, Feyd is this dude who sort of just shows up like in a meeting with Vladimir Harkin, right? So Vladimir Harkin and Pita, his Mentat, are having a conversation, and it's interesting because I think they show it in the movie too, but Peter DeVries and Vladimir Harkonnen don't really like each other. They're working with each other because they're sort of forced to. Vladimir ultimately wants to get a new Mentat, but he wants Petire, I keep saying Petire because Petire Pimple in A Song of Ice and Fire, but he wants Peter DeVries to fulfill his purpose and finish his role. And then afterwards, Vladimir Harkonnen thinks to himself about how he's going to get a new one. So, this dude, Feyd-Rautha, is a part of the conversation between Peter DeVries and Vladimir Harkonnen, and that's how he's introduced. He's introduced as this character that is like a teenager. He's annoyed that his uncle is having him sit through all these meetings and stuff, but ultimately he's being trained to be the next in line to rule House Harkonnen. So when Vladimir passes on Reigns of Power, he's going to pass it on to Feyd-Rautha, who's his nephew, right? Now, the other guy that we all see or remember from the first one, that's Beast Raban. He's being played by Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. Can't think of the actor's name right now. But Beast Raban is sort of like a pawn, right? He's going to have a bigger role in the movies, I think. But ultimately, Beast Raban is instilled as the new ruler of Arrakis after House Harkonnen takes out House Atreides, or at least they think they did, right? Because remember, Jessica and Paul were taken out to the desert and pushed out, right? And they think they're dead, right? So after that process, I'm sure at the very beginning of this movie, in part 2, we're going to see Beast Raban has been instilled as the ruler on Arrakis, and eventually he gets deposed. But the big fight is between Feyd-Rautha and Paul Atreides, right? So you hear Olympic swordsman, and you're probably, what the fuck, what? Well, remember, they don't use guns. They use las guns. They use other technology, but ultimately sword fighting is the best way to do stuff, because everybody's got these shield devices on that will stop anything that moves fast, like a bullet, right? So you need a slow-moving, sharp, pointy object to stab a nickel. And it's actually really interesting, because in the later Dune books, that technology of like using swords to fight is brought back, and is what makes the Bene Gesserit able to defeat the Honored Matres, because they start using swords again. Right? In Miles Tegg trains them how to do it. Oh man, it's amazing. I love the later Dune books. But anyway, he's called an Olympic swordsman because he literally spends most of his time training, fighting slaves in the fighting pits on Gadi Prime, and he fights them via swords. But here's the thing. He's never really in too much risk, because all of these slaves have like something put in them that makes them stop at the last second. Like, you can basically shut them down. It's a kill switch. So like a kill switch for vehicles. Like, if you're in an area where your car's stolen a lot, you put a kill switch on your car and flip it when you park it and turn it off. So then if somebody tries to come and steal your car, they're not going to know where the kill switch is, so they can't start it, they can't jump the car, they can't do anything because the kill switch is activated. That's what all of these fighters that as we can see, Feyd-Rautha is fighting in the pits. Like, this scene is the gates opening, and then he's gonna walk out and go fight some people. I can tell that, because, you know, yada yada blah blah blah. So it's just gonna be interesting, because Feyd gets really badass at fighting swords. He's training, right? And then, you know, he's gonna it's going to be a really interesting movie. I'm sorry, I just zoned out there for a second. Then these last couple of images, I'm going to fly through these. We got Beast Raban and Vladimir Harkonnen. Now, all of the Harkonnens had red hair in the books. There's no origin of their house. Like, House Atreides, they have dark goat curly hair, or just anybody who's descended from House Atreides usually has dark hair, dark eyes, and that's their feature. They descend from Greeks. They descend from this dude Agamemnon, and they can trace their lineage all the way back to ancient Greek. So House Atreides are very much Greeks, right? House Harkonnen, right? The name Harkonnen is, like, if I'm not mistaken, it seems like a Scandinavian, right? Red hair. You would assume that they're like Netherlands or whatever that area is called, right? But in the movie, they have red hair, like I said in the books. But in the movie, they're all bald. That's their number one feature. We don't go to Gadi Prime until much, much later in the Dune books, but we're going to go to Gadi Prime in this movie. That was something that they mentioned in an article that came out a few months ago. We're going to get to see Gadi Prime, so that's amazing, right? But Gadi Prime's environment, according to Denis Villeneuve, it rains a lot, the sun barely shines, so that caused all of these Harkonnen members to naturally be bald. So here's Beast Raban. Okay, let me make a comment. Vladimir Harkonnen doesn't do drugs. There's this thing called a hypnobong, and there's also this drug that, like, it involves music. So you play music and the person sees it, and it's like they get addicted to that, right? But there's a very specific instance where one of Vladimir Harkonnen's guards does drugs, right? It's called like Symphona or something, and Vladimir Harkonnen can see it in his eyes. He's like, I know this person is addicted. I know he's using drugs, but I'm going to continue to use him for my purposes. So the fact that I see Vladimir Harkonnen hitting a hookah or what potentially could be a hypnobong, it's kind of disappointing. Maybe they just want to make him seem creepy and eerier, and him smoking something with weed in it or something like that will make him seem crazy. But look, this is my Vladimir Harkonnen cosplay. This shit tastes good as fuck, boy. Freeze frame right there. And then I let the spice flow a little bit too much. So anyway, damn. Beast Raban with the sword looks badass. What I was gonna say is that he's clearly in the same scene as Gurney Halleck. This is Gurney and him fighting. I wonder if they won't give Gurney a different ending from the books and make it so that he dies saving House Atreides instead of having him later hook up with Jessica. Speaking of Jessica, I can't do that because I'm coughing too much. I was trying to do the Dune vocals. She looks amazing. She's got some damn Dune glyphs on her. She's a reverend mother. She's actually about to take it a step further. It's really interesting because Lady Jessica is talked about a lot through the Dune books after she dies. She's referenced by... so we have a couple of characters that are related to House Atreides, but remember, this is 3,500 years past the death of Paul, and then another 1,400 years after the death of Leto II, if I'm not mistaken. So this is so far in the timeline, and Jessica is still revered and thought about by some of the remaining Bene Gesserit. Like, the fact that she defied the Bene Gesserit, but then ultimately came back to the Bene Gesserit, right? In that knowing that her grandchildren were abominations, right? Specifically, her daughter, Aaliyah, she lies herself back with the Bene Gesserit. So the Bene Gesserit in the future, think about that. Like, even if we try to escape this, if we try to move on or whatever, we'll always come back to being a Bene Gesserit, right? So it's really interesting. This is a really dope image. If I'm not mistaken, we've actually seen something like this. I don't know if it was fan art or whatever, but that was one of the first images that we saw. I think it was actually a flash forward from the end of Dune Part 1 where she looked like that because she was in a cave. Or maybe it was something that was cut. And then lastly, we have, who is this? That looks like Florence Pugh, but I don't think that's her. Pugh, I think is her name. Who is this? Oh, Margot! As in Margot Fenring? That's fucking dope. I think the dude that's playing Count Fenring is the country guy. He played Rorschach in the what is it? What? The Watchmen. He didn't play Rorschach. He played Question or something. Someone that was like inspired, but let me just look it up. Watchmen show cast. Let's see. Watchmen show cast. Where's that bastard's name? Tim Blake Nelson. Tim Blake Nelson, you're not a bastard if you're watching this. You're the man. You're a really good actor. But he's been cast in the movie, and supposedly he's playing Count Fenring, right? This is Count Fenring's wife. If you're wondering who Count Fenring is, Count Fenring is basically the best friend to the Emperor Padishah. So Christopher Walken's daughter is Florence Pugh, right? Count Fenring is basically, get this, a failed version of what Paul is becoming. All right? I'm just going to leave it right there. He's a failed version of what Paul is currently becoming. It's amazing. It's I think they completely cut him out from the 1984 movies. I'm not sure, but there's a part that I hope they do show where Count Fenring attempts to assassinate Paul, right? And he gets Paul's blood on a knife, and that knife disappears from history and is used 5,000 years in the future to bring back Muad'Dib, to bring back Paul Atreides, right? Now, that's in Hunters of Dune. That's the only Frank Herbert's son, Brian Herbert, and Kevin J. Anderson. That's the only book of theirs that I've read is Hunters of Dune. I don't even have a copy of it up there. I haven't bought it yet. But I've read it. I had to know what happened after the end of Chapter House Dune. I had to keep going. I had to figure something out. Like, the story ended there. Frank ended it perfectly, but I just wanted more. And I kind of regret reading Hunters of Dune, but the premise behind the book was amazing because they're bringing back everybody's favorite characters. But anyway, this is Count Fenring's wife. Now, is this the last image of it? Oh no, we got Stilgar next. So Lady Margot is a Bene Gesserit, right? And even though her husband Count Fenring is loyal to the Emperor Padishah VI, right? Emperor Shaddam Padishah VI, she is still loyal to the Bene Gesserit. So that's really interesting in the sense of, like, even though Count Fenring, like, each one of the secret societies is really only truly loyal to themselves. So you have the Spacing Guild, truly only loyal to themselves, although they'll manipulate and make other deals with, like, the Bene Talaxu and the Bene Gesserit, for example. Like, it's really interesting. I am just a massive fan of this entire world. If you enjoyed my content, if you enjoyed this video, please let me know by subscribing and comment down below and tell me what kind of Dune content you want me to make next. Well, that doesn't really make sense because that's from our Song of Ice and Fire videos. Thank you for watching. I'm really excited about Dune, and hopefully the trailer will be out within the next week or so. You know I'm going to be breaking that down. Bye.